Hey, welcome everyone. That music kind of gets me in a nice, relaxed mood. Even though, if you've looked at the thumbnail, this is not exactly a relaxing kind of conversation, but I hope it will be interesting and actually informative for everyone. I'd like to welcome Chris Shelton. Um, I'm very excited to have you here with your wonderful channel and experience that you have had on YouTube for quite a while. This is an honor for me, so thank you. And I hope the chat is very fair to you with questions that they may have. And thank you, Geoff, also, Godless Gomer, for joining us. I always love having you here. It's always
Thank-
good.
Thanks for having me on, Claire.
Yeah.
Always
Yes,
a pleasure to be
exactly.
here.
Happy to be here. Yes.
Oh, thank you. So, as you know, we might as well dive right into it. As if they didn't know from the thumbnail and the description, this is going to be about Scientology. But I wonder, Chris, if just for anyone who just might not know who you are, if you would like to just say your experience with Scientology, like why I would have you here to speak on Scientology, so to speak.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I was born or pretty much raised in Scientology. So I'm what's called a second generation cult member. And I started working for the Church of Scientology. Not only was I raised with the ideas of it, but when I was fresh out of high school, about 17 years old, they recruited me to start working for the church. And I proceeded to do that for 25 years. And I left in 2012. And in 2013, that was sort of the year of finding out the truth. And I went down the internet rabbit hole, learned everything that I had not been taught or learned while I was working for the church. And then I started realizing something was very, very wrong. And the more I have learned and studied and recovered and grown, and that's been an awful lot of work over the last 10 years, I have, tried to expose the abusive nature of this group and other similar groups like it, because there's far too many of them.
Far too
And
many.
that's my background.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I imagine that was quite the struggle. I don't think people realize all the personal growth and things that you have to deal with coming out of a situation like that when you were in it so long.
No, people
Yeah.
generally don't think
Yeah.
about that too
Yeah.
much. No.
I'm hoping that there was are there one question I wanted to ask you, is there places for people to go to talk to? Is there like other groups of people who have already left that try to help? I mean, I hear things, I see things, I follow Mike Rinder, Tony Ortega, Leah Remini, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that there is some support out there, but just for the not the so much Hollywooder, but the average person getting out of a cult. I think there needs to be more talking about it, that they know that there's places to go. It has to be so hard.
Well, very much so. And Leah and Mike, excuse me, and some other former Scientologists, Sea Org members have put together what's called the Aftermath Foundation,
Mm-hmm.
which is a nonprofit group that supports and helps financially and logistically, gives support to people who have just freshly left Scientology or the Sea organization, and they're doing a really championship job with that. It's really been very, very helpful for a lot of people who have needed some support framework, some support network after they leave, because that tends to be one of the biggest reasons why people will stay or get stuck in such a situation where they know things aren't great, but there's no alternative. There's nothing else for them to do, or they don't think there's anybody else out there to help them. And so the Aftermath Foundation serves that function. It's not a counseling or therapy group. It's about logistical support and money,
Right.
and getting you a job and things like that. And I wish there were similar groups that assisted or specialized in helping people coming out of other destructive cult situations, because there are so many of these groups out there that are predatory and really quite damaging to people's lives.
Yeah. I would
I was,
imagine. Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
yeah, I was going to say, because I don't know if you remember, Claire. I actually interviewed a former neo-Nazi on my
Mm-hmm.
channel who
Mm-hmm.
left that on, and there was definitely a lot of sort of similarities that when there with what his sort of story of coming out of. It was very similar to stories of people who've come out of cults and so on. And a big part of what he does with his charity Beyond Barriers is, trying to is trying to put get basically, so if people come out of that extreme ideology, they've got a safe place to land, because you do lose your whole support network and in that as well. So it does. I think it's a really good thing that there are organizations doing this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, I do. Any organization that's supporting, because from what I've seen in your content, Chris, and in many others, Scientology is so like encompassing of their members. Like everything's about Scientology, and it's like a big bubble that, and then when you're out, like totally out. Like from everyone you know, everything you've ever known, no money, no place. You need everything, not only emotional support, physical support, a place to live, like
Yeah.
in and then in some cases you even need to hide, from what I hear. Like, because and I'm, I have no personal experience. I'm just going by all of the much of what I have read and heard and seen, as far as documentaries, other YouTubers putting out content, a lot of them ex-Scientologists that have personal knowledge. So, it does give a little bit of credibility. You've been there, you've seen it. um let's talk about the harassment in the trial, particularly of
Oh,
Masterson.
I'll
Yeah.
just say, by the way, Who is Claire is a website that's probably just been bought by the Church of Scientology right now.
Oh
So
yeah. Who is Claire? Thanks. Well, hopefully they just call me Bear. I don't know. I'm
mm,
not really worried about it, but it's only truth. I mean, if you have to worry about truth, I
I
don't want to be
I,
bothered.
I will say, and I did mention this to Chris before one time when we chat, that I did read the hate site about him that they got up, and I
Oh,
do remember because Chris, I remember you actually appeared on Leah Remini's show, didn't you? And I do remember her sort of joking with you. He said, "Well, as my personal gift to you, you're going to have your own Scientology hate website within the 24 hours." And but I believe that was actually the timeline in which it actually went up.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
Correct.
I know.
Yeah.
You know,
Next day. Yeah.
that's funny, because at YouTubers we could chuckle a little bit about it, because what they say. What does they say? All press is good press, right? So they could have a hate site. It just gets your name out there, right? Like, especially if you're going to be out here. But for those that are coming out that aren't ready for anything like that, that has to be devastating. I know I just recently just typed in the name Mark Hidley, and the first thing that came up was his hate site. Although I have to say, Chris, yours didn't come up first. Thankfully, you go, not so. Like yours was well down there, and I didn't
Good.
even read it. Yeah.
Good. Well, that means
Yeah.
Scientology isn't keeping up their payments to Google for keeping that at the top of
Mm.
the search heap, and I'm okay with that.
Mhm.
I have never been in this to get hate from Scientology. That's not what that's never been a goal of mine. I'm just
Mhm.
trying to
Mhm.
speak some truth, share some experiences, talk some science, and help people out.
Yeah.
And Scientology takes a great deal of exception to that kind of thing.
Yeah, they do. And from what I can see on your content, and please, everybody, if you're not familiar with the channel, I have it linked below. Please check it out. It does, most of it reads to me as the healing process about
Hmm.
helping others heal through this. If they're out there and they're wondering, if they're out there and they think they're alone, and just normalizing the process of getting through it. And I give you great credit for that because it's not that popular to talk about the bad stuff, but then how to get through it,
Hmm.
um, and
Hmm.
that's quite impressive. But one one of the things that currently I'm covering on my trial, which I mean my channel, which I also saw you did make mention of the Masterson trial a few times. So if you're okay talking about it, I'd like to bring that up. Geoff, I hope you'll give us a little grace. I'm sure you'll learn a
Yeah.
little bit about it as
I,
we go. Um,
I was just going to mention to you though, Claire. I don't know if you saw. You actually do have a super chat, so I don't know if you saw that.
I do. Let me just take care of that right now with your graces, gentlemen. Here we go. Let me see if I can. Autistic Shield, who is my mod and my member, thank you. She says, please say hi to Steffi. She's sad she can't find a movie, but I'm not sure what she's looking for. I think it's Baby Einstein DVD, which is a good one. I hope she does find something. But hello, Steffi. I love that you listen. And I'll say hi to you in the chat too. And I hope you find a movie that can entertain you. Thank you, Shield, so much. Well, thank you for that. Um, okay, so in regards to the trial, one of the issues that came up very, very early was the Book of Ethics, because one of the main reasons that Danny Masterson is on trial so many years later was a harassment complaint by all of the accusers that Scientology actually inhibited them from reporting in the beginning while they were Scientologists. And then once they were ex Scientologists, drove a hate campaign on them or a harassment campaign on them to try to avoid this situation. Um, that was distressing to me because a lot of legal loopholes had to be gone through just to get this to trial. And then they tried to use that contract that everyone signs, Chris, and I think you might be familiar with this about not speaking against Scientologists. It's like an unwritten law. You can't say anything about Scientology, especially anybody that might be above you in the process. Everything is handled internally. Was that your understanding while you were in there?
Well, yeah, and it's actually even bolder than you say because it's not unwritten, it is written.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually listed as a high crime or what they call a suppressive act in the Church of Scientology's so-called scriptures
Mm-hmm.
that you not report to authorities on Scientologists, that you not testify so as to bring ill repute to Scientologists. You cannot publicly disavow Scientology without it being a high crime.
Mm-hmm.
So these are right in the list of crime that Scientology considers its most heinous, the things that Scientologists can do that would be the worst thing they could possibly do would be these things. And you don't find breaking the law
Mm-hmm.
outside of the church's codes to be in that list of suppressive acts. There are some things that are listed there. I think murder, mayhem, but sexual assault certainly isn't. And so, if they're going to have their own internal justice system, it's quite telling that the highest crimes in that system are reporting on
Yeah.
Scientologists to the authorities. That's quite telling, and that is Scientology's ethics system or justice system. In a nutshell, is it's a very internalized system that is built and designed to reinforce and help Scientology as an organization and help people who are loyal to that group while disavowing and damaging and abusing and eventually ruining those who are not with the program.
Wow. Now,
And I,
go ahead, Geoff.
yeah, and I was gonna ask you something. Now, I think it's my understanding that with something like sexual assault, or whatever, there is a victim blaming kind of culture within Scientology. Is my understanding that it's kind of, if something like this has happened to you, that's your fault for something you've either done in the past or a past life or something like. I don't know if you could speak to that a little, Chris, if I'm right there or not.
You're absolutely right. This is under Hubbard's definition of the word responsibility. And way back in 1952, one of the original works of Scientology included a chapter in a book, and the name of the chapter is Responsibility. And in that chapter, Hubbard talks about the fact that you are always, under every circumstance and context and condition, you are always responsible ultimately for your own condition. And this, again, dogma is utilized by Scientology's ethics officers when things come up like this that are dangerous or damaging or potentially bad for the Church of Scientology as a group. If it were to be exposed, they use this to victim shame and blame, and they will tell victims of sexual assault, like they did with these women, Masterson's victims, that they pulled it in, is the expression they use in Scientology, which is, it has a bizarre, sort of origin story and energy flows and Hubbard's interpretation of how spirits use energy. We don't have to go there. But Hubbard claims that when you do bad things or you commit moral transgressions or sins, if you will, you create a vacuum spiritually that pulls in the need to create justification or rationale for your bad actions. And those justifications, those rationales that you use are the accusations you make against, say, Danny Masterson. Oh, well, I did these bad things, and in order to justify it, I'm going to accuse him of rape or sexual assault or whatever.
Wow.
And this is the philosophy. This is the philosophic principle in Scientology, and it's used in far more situations than just Masterson and his victims. This is common for Scientologists, and it's one of the ways that they will kind of, what I call it, psychological extortion. They sort of guilt you into giving money, giving your time, giving hours of work to the church because you have been doing all these naughty things, and in order to be, and you can't ever be a victim or be victimized from this point of view and responsibility. You're always the one who's in the driver's seat in your life. You're the one who's at cause. And it's supposed to be, the ironically crazy thing about this is it's supposed to be empowering.
Exactly.
It's supposed to be an empowering message. You're at cause. You're the one who's in charge of your life. But you take that too far and you get this victim blaming nonsense. And that's what Scientology engages in.
No, and that's a shame because they're damaging a good premise, like the one about taking accountability for any part of a situation that you might be in, right? I understand that, and we all agree that that's good, but then to turn it like it's just all you, no matter what, and twist it to like blame for the awful things that could happen is just too much. And I can't even imagine trying to report something as awful as what happened to these women, and then to be told, one of the women was told, like, you can't use the word rape, it can't happen, it can't happen in a relationship.
Exactly.
And unfortunately that gets said even outside of Scientology.
Oh, of course it
There
does.
is a
Yes.
culture that actually believes
Yeah.
that, and that always kind of gets me
Yes.
going, because I don't care if you're like right in the middle of, like, to be graphic, like right in the middle of everything, you're naked, you actually consented prior. As soon as something you didn't agree to starts to happen and you say no, no is no. Consent is a fluid thing, and it's a matter of respect. And I don't understand where this like this secondary citizen attitude is coming from. That's all I could think to call it.
Well, it comes. I'll tell you that it's in Scientology. I don't know about other groups, although we could take a stab at this being kind of same across a number of these groups. Is you have this sort of misogynistic attitude that comes out of old school Christian or religious morality. I mean, it's not just Christian. You see this in Islam as well. But there's a number of groups out there who have this idea that women are truly second-class citizens, and take it so far as to women being objectified or being property. And we see this on a kind of a spectrum basis. And Scientology doesn't really objectify women dogmatically. But what they do is they use this kind of responsibility dogma and various other protection mechanisms in the church to protect the church. It's all about protecting the money and the income and the steady stream of new people coming in. And that's what it's really, for this group, that's what it's all about. There are other groups where we could go down rabbit holes of misogyny and
Right.
centuries of nonsense with women. That's not exactly the case with Scientology, but the end result is the same, and it's just as awful. And that's
it
the
really
problem we
is,
have.
because it's like 2022 and they're trying to bring more people in. I mean, they are always recruiting, and of the mindset now in 2022 to actually have that present, that if you're in a relationship, you are the secondary person in the relationship. Whatever the man says goes. One of the Jane Does actually testified during this that sex was something that was an obligation. It was
Correct.
something that whatever he said, whenever he wanted, however he wanted, that was it. You don't have a choice.
That's right.
There's not an option. And I'm like, this is 2022. And that was a young woman who's grown up
Yeah.
not in Scientology. Like, how that can be, how that is accepted, and which is why they're leaving. I mean, we have to admit, and I'm going to just say it out loud. I know Scientology doesn't want us to like put a spotlight on it, but people are leaving.
Oh,
People
absolutely.
are leaving by droves. And,
yeah, it's the world's fastest shrinking religion, is how we kind of joke about it.
And could it possibly be this archaic mentality, like that you're supposed to be so progressive? They project themselves out there to be so progressive in their thinking. They're going to save the planet, they're going to save the universe, we're all going to be higher beings. Do I have that right, Chris?
You do.
In a nutshell, pretty much.
You do. Yeah.
This is the premise of Scientology. If you're with us, you are enlightened and you're better than everybody else. And I say, like, wow, get a mirror, take a look, because you need to do better. You want to save your organization? Try not being like that. Like, come on. Like, to me, it's like so obvious. Who's your PR people? Like, you need a better mission statement, because the way they're treating the women alone, or even the children that are growing up, which is another lawsuit, Chris. I don't know if you're familiar with all of that Tony's been Tony.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, you're talking about the lawsuit down in Florida. Yeah.
I mean, you and I could probably go for like 10 hours on all of this with the legal lawsuits, because, in all honesty, that's how many there are, even if we just scratch the surface of all of them. But children that grow up and start working at the age of 10, that they have identity but not identity. They're like a working cog in the system. Promoting.
I was going to point something that Christina S put in the chat that says, saying that they force abortions and divorces on their Sea Org members. Women cannot have children while working in the Sea Org. I'm shocked women's groups don't demand change.
I'm
Is
sure
that
there's no
accurate?
women's
Is that
group
accurate, Chris?
inside.
It is accurate. Yes,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
cannot have be in the Sea Org and have children. That's been a policy
Mhm.
since the mid 1990s. Actually,
Mhm.
right after I got in the Sea Org is when that came down. There was a
Mhm.
period of time where the Sea Org are the billion-year contract guys, right? Those are the full timers, the fanatics. And they're the ones who dress up in the Navy uniforms and that sort of thing. And that was a group I was part of for 17 years. I joined that in 1995. And that group used to allow children, and they would send
Mhm.
their people off to a local city level church and to raise their kids. But that's not permitted anymore. Now then what happened was people got pregnant and they were in the Sea Org, and you can't have kids, and so it was a one or the other kind of choice. And the church didn't want to be losing members or Sea Org members, and
Mhm.
so they would sit them down and convince them that an abortion was the most pro survival best thing they could do for themselves and for Scientology and for the planet as a whole. And it
Mhm.
was a sacrifice kind of thing. Yeah, we're not going to have a family this lifetime, but we're going to save the world,
Mhm.
and some people didn't want to go along with that. And some
Mhm.
people resisted that and bucked that system. I happened to be me and my then wife happened to be one of those people,
Mhm.
and the treatment would escalate, the abuse would escalate, the screaming, shouting, yelling, pounding on the walls, the isolation, the punishments, the making you work in the galley until
Mhm.
4 in the morning, these ridiculously gruesome hard physical labor punishments and other nonsense would be carried out until they changed their mind and got the abortion.
Wow.
And this went on for a few decades until it was exposed in the mid 2000s. And they finally started to taper off on this. But as far as I understand it, the policy is still the same. You can't have kids in the Sea Org.
Right.
So this problem is going to persist because people are going to continue to get pregnant because
This is
that's what happens.
yeah. And this has been documented in many stories and books and documentaries and everything about families who join and the children are immediately separated
Yes.
and put in
Yes.
someplace else. If you have a child while you're there, it's immediately separated from you if you get to have the child, from what I understand, what you're saying. And many women have come forward after leaving Scientology and spoke on this. Uh, there's been books, documentaries, like I said, so it's not just Chris saying this. Like this is out there. This that definitely has been one of the key points that have been brought up over and over again. It seems like Sea Org is one of from what I understand, is touted as the most prestigious of the accomplishments in to get accepted into it you have, and also the most rigid in punishing of them all, or as far as the separate groups that are actually inside Scientology, because it's not all the same, which I wanted to talk to you about too, because that's come out in the trial also that I read from one of the Jane Does saying that um she had to do auditing on this issue, on her making the claim. But absolutely, Danny Masterson has not even been cleared. In Geoff, is that possibly true that he hasn't had to, because he's a celebrity, or go through the risk that everybody else does, as far as the process of Scientology, of learning
Well,
the religion?
yeah, it's a little okay. Well, there's a lot of answer to that question.
Mm.
Let me try to be short.
Mhm.
There is a goal in Scientology to achieve what's called operating Thetan, okay?
Mhm.
OT. And this is the ultimate goal of every single Scientologist. If you are in that group, you want to get up to a spiritually enlightened state called operating Thetan. And there are levels of indoctrination that you have to go through, and loyalty hoops you have to jump through, and generally speaking, an awful lot of money you have to pay. Or you can work for the church like I did, and then you get your
Mhm.
services for free, but they come, few and far between. And in all the years I was in, I only made it up to about halfway up this chart that they have. It's a great big chart they put on a wall, and it's called the Bridge to Total Freedom. And this has these ascended levels that you climb. And these levels are supposed to bring you new and wild states of spiritual existence and awareness, and ultimately promise to restore your knowing and willing cause over your life, and put you in the driver's seat in such a way that you are fully responsible for your own condition, and you are the one who is, making the things happen in your life in a positive way. And ultimately, you ascend to what is considered the ultimate state of OT would be a godlike state, a place where you can literally create your own life and universe and that kind of thing. So they're not promising small. They're promising very, very big. And it's, and it's a belief set. People can believe it. I don't really care about that part of it. It's just that in order to get the money out of people to do this, right, they have set up this organizational structure, and it has various parts and pieces to it. There's 3 basic levels of involvement in Scientology. There's just being a paying public person who pays their money, do their services, do their classwork, and that's just a regular Joe Bill Scientologist, right? They have a job, they have a life, they have kids, they have a car, they got bills, all that. You have staff members who work at the city level churches, like here in Denver or New York or, LA, where you have people who sign a limited contract. It's like 2.5 or 5 years. They work for the Church of Scientology, and they get their services for free, but they really get paid pennies, and it's really just kind of a, let's take your labor kind of operation. Then you have the Sea Org, and the Sea Org is sort of your ultimate level of commitment to Scientology, because that's where you're signing a billion-year contract and saying you're dedicating your whole life to this. So those are 2 kind of different things. There's levels of involvement, and then there's the bridge to total freedom, where you're trying to get on up to OT. Whether you're a public, a staff, or Sea Org, your personal ultimate goal for being in Scientology is getting OT.
Right.
Everybody wants to get OT. That's the big prize. How you get there depends on which of these levels of involvement you take. And I tried, for example, to do the staff thing. I worked for the church, and I thought by doing that, I would not only be helping to save the world with my own 2 hands, but I would get all the benefits of Scientology as well. And after 27 years, that wasn't really the case. And it kind of hit me that, oh, I'm just here to be labor. And that's what I'm here for, is just to work and not ask questions, and yes sir, no sir, how high sir. So that's one of the things that prompted me to start questioning and got me out of there, in addition to all the lies I was having to tell people all the time. So there's a lot to this. In terms of Masterson, he's a public Scientologist. He's not staff. He doesn't work for the church, and he's not done the billion-year contract thing. He's more valuable to the church as a celebrity. He makes money, he has influence, he has power, he has connections, lots of connections, in fact. His whole family are Scientologists, and he has a whole circle of celebrities around him who are quite influential people from the shows and work that he's done. So he is a regular Joe Bill Scientologist as far as that goes. But because he's a celebrity, and because he brings in the money, and because he has the influence he lives in a kind of rarefied air of protection. He's protected by the church because he's an asset to them. And so that's why you see the Church of Scientology trying so hard to support him in this case, and call these women liars. And from day one, they were called liars. From day one, they were told they owed it to him, etc. That's because Masterson's the earner. He's the one bringing in the money for Scientology. They're not. So in any value equation of Masterson versus them, he's going to win 100% of the time because of the fact that he's an earner.
Mm.
And because he stayed loyal to the church through all this. These women were disloyal. They went to the police. They committed suppressive acts.
They did, right.
Therefore, they're the bad guys. And that's the black and white thinking of the Church of Scientology in this matter.
Yeah.
I hope all that kind of clarified where.
Yeah,
It does. It clarifies the term that she used, which was really kind of eye-opening for me, that she said that Danny Masterson was an upstat. He's referred to,
Correct.
and
That's
that
it.
means, hey, you make us look good. You can do whatever you want. Because even the
Bingo.
situations in where these assaults happened and the parties and the things that are going on, they seem contrary to what other Scientologists are saying daily life had to kind of be like, and what Scientology kind of like didn't want you actually like doing. And yet we hear a lot about all of that going on as if it's just fine for some of them, but not for others. It's kind of
That's right.
I-
I like to compare this, and I think it's a 100% accurate comparison, because I think a lot of people understand this concept. If I say, look, this is an awful lot like the mafia, it's a very apt comparison, because in the mafia, except the problem with Scientology is it's not about, everybody in the mafia knows that they're in a criminal organization doing criminal things to make money. In Scientology, you have a bunch of true believers who think that this organization and this structure and L. Ron Hubbard are all there for their benefit. And they pay their money and put in their time and jump through all the hoops and do all the stuff because they think that this is actually going to benefit them. But in fact, what you really have here is a coercive environment, a coercive organization that is using financial, psychological, and even physical, abuse and nonsense to get money out of these people. It's all about making money. So the template of control that kind of lays over this is the same kind of control you see in the mafia. If you're loyal and you are an earner, you're golden. You're a made man. You are no one can touch you. You keep bringing in the money and you stay loyal, you keep your mouth shut, we will protect you to the grave. If you speak up, if you go to the cops, if you get, try to take the money that's not yours, they're going to take you out back and put a bullet in your brain. Well, Scientology is not going to do that to you, but they will try to ruin you utterly, because that's actually right in their scriptures, is ruin, these critics of Scientology, these people who leave and talk about it, these people who fight us, who call us the bad guys. We got to take those people out. Yeah. And that's how they approach it.
No, and go on.
I was going to say something about Masterson himself, though, and I think this is interesting because you just explained his actual value to the Church of Scientology as a celebrity. But I'm trying to think who it was. Whether I can't remember if it was Aaron Smith Levenue, or I can't remember who it was I saw. But Masterson, even though he has that value, my understanding was that his actual reputation amongst Scientologists for a long time wasn't necessarily the greatest. That he wasn't that he wasn't exactly like the poster child like a Tom Cruise would be, or something. That was the way he
correct. That's
acted,
correct.
Yeah.
No, he's a party hardy guy. He's DJ Donkey Punch. He's the guy who's out there going out and doing parties and doing drugs and drinking all the time. This is not the example of a upstat Scientologist, not like a Tom Cruise who literally epitomizes Scientology to Scientologists. They see Tom Cruise as walking on water. Masterson was never ever like that, but we cannot ignore that his mother, his father, his sister, his half brother, they're not only actors in their own right. I mean, his half sister or sister was on The Walking Dead. His half brother was Malcolm in the Middle and other shows. They're actors in their own right. And if he gets thrown under the bus, well, what happens to the rest of that family? What about those connections? They're connected in with the Phillips family through Danny's wife.
Mm-hmm.
Ashton Kutcher is a friend of his.
Exactly.
These are powerful people. And the
Mm-hmm.
Church of Scientology wants access, wants influence. And if Masterson gets thrown under the bus, an awful lot of people are going to have egg on their face because of that relationship. And that's going to make Scientology look bad, and it's going to lose them money.
Mm-hmm.
And it's undeniable. It's simply a fact of life that those dots are all connected. It's not, it's not something I'm making up.
No, it's unfortunate that more don't see how much the money is actually the influence here. Even
Oh
those
yeah.
that actually believe in the mission that they are putting out there of what they want to accomplish, which we have to admit, like for anyone that's searching for something to be a part of, whatever, it sounds pretty good on the surface, doesn't it, Chris? I mean, you became a part of it for a reason. I mean, although your family, everyone was there, some of it does sound something you would want to achieve. Or you want to do good for the planet. You want to help other people see that they have control of the situation, that they're accountable, this, that, the other thing. Like you can take control of your life. These are good premises on the surface until
Correct.
until you have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars, like almost like an MLN to get up the ladder. Like
It's exactly
it's
like an
not
MLM.
about
Yeah.
how much you achieve. It's not about how much you learn or contribute to Scientology unless it's money for how high you get up there. Like I was going over those ladders, the books of achievement that they have to accomplish. And it's all based on financial courses. Same thing with Nixium. You couldn't
Hmm.
get anywhere until you put out X amount of dollars. You don't own your house. You don't own anything. It's how much are you willing to give them? And in the end, it's everything. Like you're owned lock, stock, and barrel by Scientology, and you still may not be up far enough on the ladder, depending on how much financially you can contribute to them or get for them in some way in trade, as far as
Correct.
celebrities, as far as clout, as buildings, connections, things like that. um why, I mean, to me, that's like, I'm not trying to be obnoxious to Scientology while I'm being obnoxious to Scientology, but it's so obvious to me. It's like stares you right in the face, and I just don't know how. The other thing is how they legally qualify to be a religion under those
Oh, don't even get
circumstances.
me started on how
That's
easy
a,
it is to become a
That's a whole
religion.
other
even
Yeah.
stream. Yeah, that's a
I,
whole
g-
other
I,
stream.
I'm going to say I don't know an awful lot about US law, but even I know that is a long, long
Mhm.
Yeah.
conversation.
It has been challenged. All I will say about it is it gets challenged all over the world, and I'm glad to see it. It's being
Yeah.
challenged in countries. They've had legal battles back and forth, and I'd
They've
like to see a lot more of that because it is a valid question. I'm not
they've
just throwing
they've
shade.
tried for
Yeah.
years to get tax exempt status in the UK, but I don't
Mhm,
believe they've ever been
mhm,
successful.
mhm.
Mm-mm. Not yet.
They lose it here and there,
Not,
in
not,
other
They
not
do
countries.
have
Yeah.
they do have a kind of religious recognition in the UK now,
Mhm,
mm,
because they can perform marriages and things like that, but the tax exemption still eludes them, as I
mhm,
understand it, in the
yeah,
UK.
which is the thing they really want.
That's
mhm.
right.
Well,
That is the thing they absolutely want
mhm,
in the
Yeah.
that,
yeah.
that's they have it's actually weird because there was a conservative member of parliament for a place called East Grinstead with Scientology have got one of their big this big mansion that Scientology's owned it since the 1960s.
Mhm,
I think it's called St Hill. Is that correct, Chris? I
Correct. St.
believe.
Hill
mhm,
Manor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mhm,
St Hill. Yeah, and the local member of parliament there, who for years was a guy called Nicholas Soames, who's funny
mhm,
enough grandson of Winston Churchill, but he used to for a long, long time was going to bat for Scientology in Parliament about they should get a. So he was they very much cozied up to him, but he's sort of retired now. But ironically enough, I think their new member of Parliament they're trying to woo is
mhm,
woman called Mims Davis, who used to be my member of Parliament, but she moved
mhm.
to East Grinstead, so it's all a
Yeah.
bit weird how the British system work. But they've definitely whoever the local member of Parliament in East Grinstead's been, they've always
Mhm,
tended to try and butter them up or whatever to go to bat for them in Parliament.
Mm. On that, I think it's very important that everybody recognizes when they have that kind of reach, when they have the money behind them, they have the celebrities behind them, they've got that political clout, the celebrity public relations clout like that, it makes them even more dangerous, which is why it would be preferable if it was better known what their actual motives are and what they're doing and how they're actually treating their members on the inside. And I think that perhaps is why they clamp down like so hard. It's hard to have that kind of media influence and that kind of, influence out there when people are saying all this about how you treat your own members.
That's right.
Which is the real big issue here. You can't possibly be okay with everything that's going on within that organization when you see the state of the people that come out of it. And that, I mean, currently, Chris, like, this is awesome, but I'm sure you weren't like this the day you walked out of there. That had to be horrific for you. And that's what I'm talking about the state, that what has happened and what you have to realize and deal with. It really speaks loudly, and I don't think enough attention gets paid to it. And I know they think too much attention is being paid to it, and I'm saying not enough, because real damage is being done, real damage to individuals on a regular basis, and it doesn't have to be that way. If they really have a mission, if they really have a goal of what they're talking about, there are better ways to do it, and maybe they need to go through some auditing in or be accountable for what the heck they're doing. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does need to be said, and maybe I should have led with this. I often forget to lead with this, but the fact is that the plain and simple truth is the Church of Scientology is at its core a money-making scam,
Mm-hmm.
and it uses what we call religious cloaking. Right? They
Mm-hmm.
don the religious garments. They talk religious talk. They have the little dog collars and the rituals and the rites and the dogma. But it's all window dressing. It's an
Mm-hmm.
extortion scheme. It's a blackmail scheme. It's a coercive control scheme that uses the belief and hopes and dreams of its members against them to get as much money out of them as it can wring out before it tosses them under the bus. And I, have lived that, seen that on all ends, and I've watched it happen to other people, endless numbers of times. And I've actually done, at this point, social science, but it is science research
Mm-hmm.
on the control framework of Scientology. It's a thing. It's not just some opinion. You can actually go through the materials that L. Ron Hubbard wrote or
Mm-hmm.
lectured on,
Right.
and you can pull out the various points of control that he kind of establishes and see it for what it is. There's no other way to interpret it except as a high control coercive operation that is after your money. And it sounds stark and simple. And well, what about all these books? And what about all these lectures? What about all these
Right.
people and all this belief? And you just go, no, just cut through all that. That's all window dressing. What's going on here is, there was a guy, L. Ron Hubbard, and he was a megalomaniac, and he was a lot of other things. But at the heart of it, he wanted his name on everybody's lips. He wanted immortality. And that's how he thought he'd get it.
I am so glad to hear you say that, because
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a YouTube quote out there somewhere of me saying, like, I was naive enough to think way back when Dianetics first came out, seeing that paperback, I seriously thought he was a science fiction writer that wrote a great story and was going to make a bunch of money off of it. He could play as an MLN. Seriously. And to now, all these years later, see that, wow, not far off.
No,
Really not far off.
not far off. That's right.
And I was called naive and everything, and everybody's telling me, no, this is the best thing ever. Like, this can really, I'm like, but he's a science fiction writer, right? Like, isn't he in competition with Asimov for some award or something? Like, I was like, I really did believe that. My naivety, I'll admit it, little dumb, but it's not that far off when you think about it. When you see what he wrote and you see, or don't see, actually, how anybody gets to the top where Ron said everybody should be. Who's been there?
Well, that's exactly the problem. Is
Nobody
no
ever
one
gets
has.
there.
No one
Yeah,
has.
it's
There's,
a
it's over promising and under delivering. I mean, it's, I don't know. I don't want to get all ideological, but it's a
right.
little like Elon Musk. I mean, the guy
Uh-huh.
just promises, 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 and he never really delivers. And you're
I
like,
know.
what is up with this guy? How do people keep throwing millions of money, of
I know.
dollars at
I
this
was
guy who keeps promising and doesn't deliver? And it's not so dissimilar with Scientologists in the
yeah.
way they just keep hoping and hoping and hoping. And there's an awful lot of psychological mechanisms that you can dissect from that. But the bottom line is it's about the money,
Mm-hmm.
you
True.
know.
True. And that saying that Barnum made, right? Like about a sucker being born every
You
minute.
know,
Mm-hmm.
it's sad but
Mm-hmm.
true. And
It is.
I resist the language a little bit
Mhm. I
because
know. We
people
don't.
are,
Yeah.
they're
Mm-hmm.
they're not stupid. In fact,
They know.
the
Mm-hmm.
fact is most people in most cultic situations are actually, I will say, above average intelligence. Now that is
Mm-hmm.
my take on it, but you need that intelligence in order to keep yourself there, because
Mm-hmm.
you have to keep justifying why you're paying,
Mm-hmm.
why this is going to work for you,
Mm-hmm.
why this is an endeavor that's a positive, when it's obvious by the facts that it's a negative. And if you don't have enough imagination to
Exactly.
dream up why you need to keep doing this,
I.
you're going to leave. And I watched tons of people over the years leave Scientology, because they came to realize this wasn't what it said it was.
Mm-hmm. I so agree with everything that you just said. Going back to just the research I did on Nixium, the women that Keith Rainier went from were all highly educated, very
Yes.
professional. He target them on their outlook. They were just, you know, just not your average. I don't want to say they were like all that, but yeah, they were. They were like all that. Look at Nancy. She was
Hmm.
top. She could sell snow to an Eskimo. She was top in business. She ran circles around most people. And yet brought them in and reduced them, just systematically reduced them down
Correct.
to secondary in
That's right.
everything. And that was so horrifying for me. But the same thing with Scientology, educated, smart people. But it just speaks to me. I have great empathy for the people that feel that are looking for something, that they need to want to belong, like, someone who thinks like me, something, there's got to be something out there to latch on that I can, get more control over my life, feel like I belong, feel like I'm doing something with this existence that I have. Like, I get that. And I get how they use it. They use that we all have in us, and they prey on it, and just sell it to us in a different package and suck us in. You know what I mean? Like, they just,
Exactly.
yeah. I have great empathy. I do not think these are foolish people. I do not think that there's anything wrong with them at all. I have great empathy, and I hate the misinformation and the damage that's been doing. I can't even tell you how it makes me feel when I see it. It just
Yes, it's infuriating.
I,
Yeah.
I think there's
infuriating.
some. See, this is one of those things that, I mean, and I've often sort of thought this to myself about this. If I ever see someone saying, "Oh, you've got to be an idiot or to
Hmm.
get into a cult, or you've got,
Hmm.
or start thinking I'm too smart to get into a cult," don't think that way. Do not fall into that trap of
That's
thinking
right.
that way.
That's
Hmm.
right.
I mean, I've seen. I mean, another good example I can see of people that have got, who are a tiny little cult, in a sense, tiny little sect with, well, obviously some beliefs. Some beliefs that I personally find a bit abhorrent. This has been the Westboro Baptist Church, but
Hmm.
you see the people in there, though, they're not idiots.
Mm-mm.
Whatever else you
No.
want to say about them, they're
Hmm.
not stupid people.
Hmm.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. I mean, look at the people who have come out and what they've done.
Mm,
Megan
Hmm.
Megan Phelps Roper wrote a book, has gone on a press tour, has exposed the awfulness of the WBC in
Hmm.
all its ways. And
Hmm.
mm.
she was Fred Phelps' granddaughter. And was
Right.
she stupid? Was she an ignorant hick? You
No.
bet she was not.
Nope.
Mm.
You
Nope.
know.
They believe, and they want to do good. I really do think that that's
That's
why
right.
they're all there. That they do
That's right.
absolutely have a desire to do better and to be better and to do good. I see it in all of them. And then to hear the exit stories when they come out, where they're doubting themselves, or when they see some of the harm that's done and that they may have contributed to an organization that does such horrific things. Because there are, I don't know about facts because I haven't seen an actual legal case or a prosecution actually against them for some of the things that have been said, like human trafficking and
Hmm.
child labor and just the secondary class citizen and women in general. Some of the things I don't believe in, like I believe in body autonomy. Apparently Scientology doesn't. But
Oh, they
yeah,
definitely do not.
yeah.
No. Your
So
body is the
yeah.
least autonomous thing you own in Scientology.
Exactly. Like
Yeah,
you're a vessel for their will, apparently, or
yes,
whoever's on the top rung above you.
that's
And
right.
to me, that's offensive. Just where I am with it. Um, and I think that when you realize this when you're in, I can just imagine. I can't put myself in your shoes, but to me, it just seems like such a horrible position to be in. You're in the organization and you're starting to see some of this stuff and starting to doubt some of the things that you're actually telling people, and helping other Scientologists understand. And you have doubt yourself and you're seeing things yourself. I have to give you a lot of credit, Chris, to come out of that after all of these years whole and helping others is an amazing accomplishment. An amazing
Thank you.
accomplishment.
Thank you.
Mm.
And it is. I mean, I'll pat myself on the back for it.
You
You know, it was
should.
it was an
Please
awful.
do.
It's been an incredible amount of work overcoming this. And 10 years out, I'm sad a little bit still that I'm still having to go through this, but there's bits and pieces. And when you're raised in something like this, it's a whole different experience than when you are converted midway through your life. And, coming out of a cult when you're in that headspace is a little bit of a different thing than when you're raised in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know I've had, more challenges than your average bear, but it's I just my mission here, my thing, and why I go on shows, why I talk about this is I just want to prevent this. I want to prevent other people from falling into the same traps. And when you see a trap, know a trap, can figure out the trap, and then you can kind of hopefully lay it out for others. You're not going to prevent everybody else from getting into it. There's going to be people, oh, I'm too smart for that. I know better. I can see through things. And they need a lesson in humility. And sometimes it takes something awful happening to them to get it. But you hope the most people are not going to have that ego problem. They're going to recognize that what you're saying is like, oh, yeah, I should avoid this group. I should stay away from this. This is not good for me. And that's kind of my effort here.
No, and they say you do deserve a lot of credit for that. That's not patting yourself on the back. That's just facts. That's just honest discourse and conversation. And I appreciate you for sharing with us. I have like one of those standard questions that I can't even believe I'm going to ask, but I'm gonna,
Yeah.
because
What
a
you got?
lot of people have asked me. They said, when you have Chris on, just ask him this. If there was one thing, we're going to get esoterical here. One thing you want everyone to know about Scientology that could help with the misinformation, especially with what's going on right now, what would it be?
Well, I would that it's a money-making scam. I
Oh,
mean, that's
there you go.
that's the key thing right at the
Mhm,
bottom of it. Um, the other thing that I guess I would put out there, and this is a little more esoteric, this has a little bit more, highbrow or whatever in terms of Scientology analysis, but you're dealing with an occult practice that's disguised as a religion, that's actually a con. And the occult practice part of it is the weirdest part. And
mhm,
it's because the membership aren't aware of Scientology's actual origins.
mhm,
And its origins do come out of 19th century, early 20th century occult practices with Aleister Crowley, who I think is maybe a bit more famous in the UK than he is in the
Oh
US,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Hubbard loved Crowley. He
mhm.
used
Well,
he talks about Crowley's tarot deck. He says my friend Aleister Crowley, and this kind of thing.
I don't think he ever met. I don't think he ever met Crowley, did he,
Never
Hubbard?
did. Never
But
met
it's
him.
yeah. I mean, Crowley was a con man in his own right, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yes,
But
there's a thing there. But I'll tell you, I bring this up only because it took me, as a former member, it took me years to get around to accepting the kind of awful truth at the heart of Scientology, which is that it is about, and I alluded to this earlier when I said L. Ron Hubbard wanted his name on as many lips as possible. He wanted that. And he thought Scientology was going to take over the world. And by taking over the world, everybody would be adoring and worshiping at the altar of L. Ron Hubbard. Now, I don't mean worship, I mean that figuratively, that nobody's worshiping L. Ron Hubbard in Scientology. But at the same time, they glorify him to such an extent that they might as well be worshiping the man. And that's exactly what he wanted. And he didn't really care how it happened. And that's why the levels of abuse are so awful in that group, is because it's not about helping people. It's not about improving conditions in life. It's not about making you a god. It's actually, as bizarre as this is, it's about making L. Ron Hubbard a god. And that's it. You know?
Absolutely. Oh gosh, absolutely. And it seems like Miscavige is following like right there behind him.
Well, I'll tell you, Miscavige definitely just assumed the throne and took over and took all the power. But you know, the really funny and kind of bizarre thing is, I don't think David Miscavige even realizes what I just said.
It's true. That's true. And the kind of sad, you know.
Yeah, he
like,
doesn't understand his own con. And that's actually, if you want to kind of have a laugh, that's why Scientology has been collapsing ever since Miscavige took over, is because he doesn't understand his own con.
You know, and you can see that, like, that was pretty clear to me, that it was something he was doing and not even believing, doesn't understand it, doesn't get where it's coming from, hasn't seen it. And it, you know, and I agree, and I can't say that I'm sad though that it's collapsing.
No,
at
not
all.
at all. It's a
But,
very, very good thing that Scientology is going the way of the dodo. It
It is,
really
because if they're
is.
not going to do better, they shouldn't really be. I mean, like, if they're not going to take the time to fix their internal stuff,
I mean, this
they
is
don't
the thing.
deserve
I
it.
don't think they're capable of fixing themselves internally. I mean, you know, with you know, I mean, with you know, they're going by the playbook of L. Ron Hubbard.
That's right.
They can't really, can't they? It's pretty difficult to reform yourself when you are going by that playbook.
That's right. It's actually impossible. They have to step outside the box. And they have been told by outside PR firms, by trained professionals who they've hired, how can we improve our image? How can we do better? And they were told what to do. Stop being so damn culty. And they were like, well, we can't do that, so screw you guys. And they continued on. And this was an effort Miscavige made back in the 1990s. And you can see he always thinks of himself as the smartest guy in the room. And you know, his intelligence isn't his problem. His psychotic insanity is.
It
but
is.
that psychosis drives him towards self-destruction and in the end, the destruction of the group.
And it's infectious in how they enforce things, and
That's right.
how much more aggressive they got. I mean,
That's
those
right.
that were looking and watching from the outside, you can see it, and I'm sure those on the inside that were looking for it could feel it. And I'm glad. Listen, Chris, you know, we're at an hour, and I'm so grateful that you gave us this time.
Thank
so I don't
you.
want to hold you up. I know that you are a very busy man, and I want you to get out there and do more good things for
you.
everybody on this. Thank you for your time. I hope someday you can come back. There's so much more to talk about.
Yeah,
this.
happy
But
to.
important thing is, if not here with me, with everyone everywhere, because I really think you're doing a great job of getting the message out there and giving support to those that really need to hear it. And I think you understand it because you've been there, and just keep doing you do.
You bet. Thank you.
And thank you, Geoff, for joining us too.
It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to get a chance to talk to Chris. So
yay, yeah, Geoff, that was fun.
Yes,
Yeah.
I am so happy that we got to do this. Thank you for everybody in the chat. Thank you everybody on YouTube who listens to this later. Put your comments in the back on the section, do all those YouTube things. But on that, I'm going to call it an end. And thank you again so much for your time, Chris. This has been a great pleasure.
You bet.
All right. All right.